When you think of JP Morgan, it is easy to think of JP Morgan Chase Bank. This is the United States and one of the largest commercial banks in the world. J.P. Morgan Group. It was founded by George Peabody in London in 1838. Later, the Morgan family inherited the bank and moved it to New York, from importing European capital into North America to support the development of the United States, to exporting American capital in World War I and after the war, supported the war effort and rebuilt Europe, establishing U.S. global financial hegemony. J.P. Morgan was a major player at home in the United States. Morgan controlled railroads, steel, shipping, and many other industries. In the world, Morgan's capital power extended to the Far East and Latin America. We're going to talk about the central figure of the family, Pierpont Morgan, also known as Cleen Morgan, and his son Jack Morgan with the same initials. Both are J.P. Morgan. Life expectancy is also the same. Both are 76 years old. Just a difference of 30 years so. To differentiate, we will call Pierpont Morgan as Old Morgan. Although J.P. Morgan Chase is not a private company of the Morgan family anymore, an institution is an extension of a person's influence, then J.P. Morgan, as an institution, is largely an extension of the influence of the Old Morgan. At the height of his career, he laughed with kings, presidents, and prime ministers around the world. He had the largest private collection of art in the country. Wealth by itself is not enough to make us respect him. It is merely a unit of measurement for his success in life. His wisdom, courage, and vision to create wealth is what we need to learn. J.P. Morgan is a major player in American business and finance. With the support of his father, he established J.P. Morgan & Co. until the formation of a monopoly consortium created a dramatic business history. He was called the King of Trusts, the Napoleon of Finance. He and Addison Carnegie, President Roosevelt, and even King Edward VII of England, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany. He was a very close friend. He was the owner of the largest steel company, founder of the world's largest securities company, one of the most respected and controversial greats. Morgan, he had a keen sense of insight and action. When he graduated from college, Morgan had a unique sense of judgment to invest in a coffee business and made a fortune. During the American Civil War, he also used his secret intelligence, collected a large amount of gold. He made a fortune. Later, Morgan penetrated the real sector through banking, performed several famous asset restructuring during the railroad system of the time, creating the very efficient Morgan System Railroad. He also bought the property of the then steel magnate Carnegie's properties, and then bought the mines of Rockefeller, the oil king. He invested in the shipping industry, etc. Morgan's final triumph came in the late 19th century. Several times in the war, gambling, and by underwriting the national debt of various countries, gained excessive returns. He had such a long view of the situation, this accurate judgment and boldness. He has been very profitable in several wars. So why was Morgan so successful? People in the past always tend to look at his family history and personal traits to find the answer. It's true that he was very courageous, very honest and righteous. He has a practical and pragmatic spirit. At the critical moment, he was determined to look after the interests of the country and, while pursuing business interests, not forget to balance public welfare and social responsibility. Morgan possesses these excellent qualities to a large extent. Depends on his father's excellent education. When he was a child, his health was not good, but his father still insisted that he go to Europe to study. At the same time, his father exposed him to business at an early age. He was familiar with the business of various companies. He was able to develop a keen insight and flexible social skills. He had a great sense of money. When there is money to be made, he never lets it go. The Morgan family is a long-established American tycoon. 16 years after the Mayflower arrived on the American continent, the family came to the area where Marcellus is located today. By running farms and fighting the Indians, he accumulated a large amount of land. His descendant, Joseph, made his fortune in insurance. When he died in 1847, he left an estate of over $1 million. This was an astronomical sum in those days. Morgan Sr. was Joseph's grandson. His father, Junius, was a partner in the largest business firm in Boston. He later became the wealthiest American banker in London. He was served by a valet in his home, dining in evening dress. After dinner, he smoked Havana cigars, drinking red Bordeaux. But Junius didn't spoil his children. When the elder Morgan was a child, he had an allowance of 25 cents a week. He kept a careful account of the money he spent on candy and oranges. He kept a careful account of all the money he spent on candy and oranges when he was 12 years old. Children want to see his collection of Columbus cards. He had to charge for them. When he first started working, Morgan Sr. worked as a junior clerk at Duncan Sherman. One time, he went to New Orleans on business. He found a bunch of Brazilian coffee that had arrived on shore, but there was no buyer. He decided there was money to be made, so he put his company's money on the line, bought all the coffees without authorization. He made a quick profit. It was this sensitivity to money was what made him later figure out so many ways to make money. If you are indifferent to but there was no buyer, he decided there was money to be made, so he put his company's money on the line, bought all the coffees without authorization. He made a quick profit. It was this sensitivity to money was what made him later figure out so many ways to make money. Then it is not suitable for business. In the early days of the Morgan family's fortunes, money is money. Not too much about morality and righteousness, as long as you do not break the bottom line of the law can be. So the war for his family, that is the opportunity to make money. After the outbreak of the American Civil War, the Union Army was running low on reinforcements. Morgan Sr. received a draft order. His maternal grandfather had already enlisted. He was a chaplain in the army, and he paid $300 to find a poor man to enlist for him. He joked that this was another Morgan, and he, himself, was busy taking advantage of the fierce changes in the war, doing speculative business. At one point he shipped a large shipment of gold on a gas boat to manipulate the market. He made $160,000 in one trip. In 1861, Morgan Sr. made an arms deal, bought 5,000 old government rifles for $3.50 each, modified them, and then he sold it to the government for $22. So the government paid 6 times the price to buy back the Keach guns that it had sold itself. Interestingly enough, many people later saw old Morgan as a patriotic banker because he had saved Wall Street during the financial crisis of Wall Street, and even the entire U.S. financial system. For old Morgan, the fundamental motivation of all actions is to make money. If, by the way, he loves his country, it is also because of the patriotic money to earn. In 1863, Morgan sent a telegram to his father telling him that the news that the Federal Army had taken Vicksburg. His father made a lot of money on the bond boom that followed. At the time, banking circles view such speculation as shrewd and not morally burdensome. A member of the Rothschild family had a famous saying, "When blood is flowing in the streets of Paris, it's time to buy in." The pursuit of money without hesitation. This was the first lesson of the old Morgan success, helping the government get its bonds issued for money, and ultimately, helping President Lincoln win the Civil War. Old Morgan's image is full of wildness. His yacht was called the Pirate. People joke that this yacht is flying a beige flag. A pirate flag at the bottom is the Stars and Stripes. It is also said that he is a descendant of the pirate Henry Morgan. During the war he said, "One day, the United States will emerge as the world's the richest country in the world in terms of natural resources, because the railroads had awakened dormant resources." At that time, Europe had money that was eager to invest in U.S. railroad stocks, but confused about what's going on in the U.S. needed U.S. banks to join them and take them to the gold fields. Morgan saw the opportunity to enter the industry. He was no longer satisfied with the traditional bank plus role of just issuing stock for the railroads. Stock for railroads, He was no longer satisfied with the traditional banking role, but to get directly involved in the management of the company. After experiencing some casualties, Morgan became a director of the Osage Railway Company. It was the first time a banker had ever served as a director of a company, heralding the dawn of a new era. In those chaotic times, market turmoil was the norm, but for a business warrior like old Morgan, turmoil is opportunity. In 1873, Washington decided to issue new bonds at lower interest rates. The man who ruled the financial world at the time was a man named Koch. He had made a fortune selling government bonds. He built a 52-room castle in Philadelphia, a $300 million bond issue. He was ready to join forces with the Rothschilds and others. The Rothschild family and others were going to join forces and swallow the business. But Morgan Sr. wanted to do the same thing. He spread rumors everywhere that Koch had to make up for the deficit of the North Pacific Railway bonds. He was desperate to get a new bond issue. At the same time, Morgan Sr. was working through his partners. Morgan Sr. was influencing through his associates and his relationship with President Grant. In the end, the Treasury Department gave Koch and Morgan half of the issue. But the Northern Pacific Railroad scandal was still festering, affecting all U.S. bond issues. By August 1873, the London market was saying that even if the angels came to sign, U.S. bonds were untouched. On September 18th of that year, the stock market crash broke out. The illustrious Koch syndicate was wiped out, causing the collapse of 5,000 commercial companies, and 57 securities firms collapsed. The shrewd old J.P. Morgan recovered the money in time and made more than $1 million from the turmoil. With the bankruptcy of Koch, old Morgan's company came out on top. But the panic cost European investors in Amtrak $600 million in losses. Seeing the massive railroad bankruptcies, Morgan Sr. came to a conclusion. In the future, business should be concentrated on elite companies. Eventually, this evolved into the Morgan strategy: deal only with the strongest companies, avoiding the speculative companies. So after Morgan's empire took hold and rose to prominence, how did J.P. Morgan Sr. make this empire? And how did the old J.P. Morgan make the empire bigger and stronger? We'll talk about that in the next issue.